Hello and welcome to Brainwaves. I'm Brandon Staglin, your host. Thank you for watching. If you've ever experienced a brain illness, you may know that it takes some bravery to talk about it at times. Jennifer Marshall knows what stigma feels like, and she's dedicated her life to eradicating it both for herself and for others. Recently featured in The Oprah magazine and The Washington Post, her advocacy includes the founding and direction of a nationwide theater production called This Is My Brave, in which folks with mental illness tell their stories in artistic and inspiring ways. And Jennifer's with us today to talk about what she's learned from her work in advocacy. And you may ask her questions at any time during the Google Hangout through your Hangout window interface. You may also ask her follow-up questions on IMRO's website at imhro.org/brain-waves after this interview is done, and the recording you can watch after it's done on IMRO's website at that address. So Jennifer, thank you so much for appearing on Brainwaves with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandon. I'm really glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So I wanted to ask you a number of questions, and we'll start with the first one here. So you blogged for a while before actually coming out to the public with your name. You blogged anonymously for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, what was going through your mind at the time when you chose to finally disclose your name and with regards to your condition to the public, and what were the consequences?
So yes, you're right. I did blog anonymously. I started writing in 2011 when my daughter was about a year old, and I had been through at that point and up until today 4 hospitalizations for mania, and felt as though I was at a point in my recovery where I wanted to speak out about it. And actually, from the beginning, I wanted to be open about it and use my real name, but I consulted with my husband and my parents and a few close friends and said, I'm starting this blog and I really want to use my real name, but I know there is stigma out there and there's discrimination, and what do you think? And everyone I talked to recommended I just be anonymous at first, and said, you can still write your story out, just be, something like a pen name. And so I ended up calling the blog Bipolar Mom Life, because I was writing about life and I was writing about being a mom, and I have bipolar disorder. So I wanted people to find me when they searched. And, it was always an internal struggle with wanting to be open. And I remember one conversation with my dad where he said, why do you want to be open about it? Why can't you just write anonymously? And I said, Dad, but if I am more open, because I would find blogs online that were anonymous and I would read them, but you feel so much more of a connection with the person when you see their photo and you can know more about them on a personal level. And I said, Dad, if I could reach just one person and help them know that they can live a good life and a successful, happy life despite a mental illness, it'll be all worth it. And so, my parents and my family and husband followed along with my writing. And then after about a year and a half, an editor from the website What to Expect When You're Expecting, which is from that book that all women pick up when they are first pregnant. And she said, will you write a blog piece for us? And I said, sure. And so I wrote a piece. And then she said, we absolutely loved it. Will you continue to write for us? And I said, yes. And they were paying me at that point. So I said to myself, I'm done hiding. I'm not ashamed of this. I've never really have been ashamed of it, except from, when it first happened. It's scary and everything, and you're feeling conflicted feelings. But I was at that point where I was ready to open up and I was ready to tell my real story. And so I opened up, and the outpouring of support was just so positive, and it really reinforced to me that I made the right decision.
That's awesome, because it does take some bravery to talk about it. I think people know that when they read what you've written or hear what you say, and I think that impresses them. So my next question is, what does bravery mean to you?
I mean, I think bravery to me, it's kind of synonymous with vulnerability. because, the more you can talk about the hard things you've been through and really, really open up, I feel like that allows you to connect with people on a deeper level. And so, bravery is showing people your true colors and showing them your what's on the inside, and talking about the messy parts of life, because not everything is perfect. And I mean, through the times I've been sick, there have been so many rough moments, but the more I'm able to be brave and talk about them, the more others know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I have this quote somewhere on our This Is My Brave blog where I say, someday I hope that we won't have to call it brave for talking about mental illness. We'll just call it talking, because, that's how the name kind of came up with talking. People kept saying, "Oh, you're so brave." And I do think, like you had said earlier, that it does take some bravery in the beginning. But the first couple of times you share your story, it definitely takes courage. But then it becomes more and more easy to open up. And I think that the more we open up, the more other people feel it's okay to open up, so they see similarities in your story, so they want to tell you their story. We see that all the time. So
That's profound and true. With regard to others telling their story, and you're doing this nationwide theater production called This Is My Brave. Kudos for founding that. It's amazing. I've seen one of your shows and I was very moved.
thank you so much. I was so glad you got to see it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Um, so when you do these shows, you must learn a lot from the other people who give their performances, in interacting with them and what they say in their performances. What have you learned from doing these shows and from the people who are in them?
Oh my God, a lot of things. I've learned about disorders I didn't even know about. That's one thing for sure. Uh, because we tend to, well, we audition, lots of people want to share their story on a platform like ours. And so we hold auditions for the shows, and we select stories, you know, based on the creativity and the message, because we like to share messages of hope and inspiration, but also a variety of conditions. We all of our shows feature not just stories of depression or not just stories of bipolar disorder. It's really a mix of different things. And so you you know part of our goal is to educate the audience if they're not aware of these different conditions. And so that's one thing. But also, just I've learned that it's very liberating for folks to get up on that stage and share their story in front of a crowd of some strangers, a lot of strangers, and some friends and family who may or may not have known all the details. And so they often tell us that they just feel so free afterwards, and that then they become almost like that person in the community who people feel like they can go to. And so that's another part of our goal, is to open up the conversation surrounding mental health issues so that the community does feel like they can work together and they can help each other find the resources.
That's fantastic. I'm really impressed with what you're doing. The idea of feeling liberated after speaking out about your condition resonates with me too. I felt the same way after I first went public, so to speak.
Mhm. I did too.
Uh, Great. Yeah. So, how has medical treatment figured into your recovery process, and what other factors in your life helped your wellness?
So I first got sick 10, coming up on 11 years ago now. And back then, it came out of nowhere for me. And I remember, well, and it all happened kind of in 1 month time frame. And so I had 2 episodes that each required hospitalization. And so coming out of that and trying to figure out understanding bipolar disorder specifically, and we did a lot of reading and trying to educate ourselves on, when I say we, I mean my husband and I, my parents and I, trying to educate ourselves on the different medications that were available. And I remember one thing my dad said that was so helpful, that I have written about on my blog, and a lot of people have said that has helped them, is he said, get a small notebook. I was trying to look around to see if I have one that's kind of like this, like a small notebook that you can just pick up at Target or CVS, and write a page a day, and just at the top of the page write the date and how you're feeling, and then any medications you take and any side effects you're feeling. And I did that, I kid you not, for like 4 years in a row. And it was like my ritual that every day I'd write that down. And I mean, yes, then you have doctors incorporating the mood chart, you know, that you can do the little dots and stuff like that. But this little journal, they meant a lot to my treatment process in the beginning, because I was able to take them with me to doctor's appointments, and the doctor would say, well, how'd you feel this week? And I'd go back and kind of really give the doctor a better sense of what was working. And because in the beginning you are trying different things, and so it is helpful to have a record like that. But I was lucky. I had a year after I was diagnosed of severe depression, severe anxiety, and I just kept plugging along, and I kept seeing my doctors and trying new things, and eventually we landed on something that worked for me. And so, you know, finding that was a relief, and along the way, so that was, you know, 9 years ago, finding the right treatment. And then I had a couple more hospitalizations when I had my children, because I came off the medication, and so I had to kind of restart my recovery process. But each time, I mean, over the years, I've gotten better at identifying my triggers and feeling the symptoms. And then when the symptoms start to come up, really getting on top of it and controlling those symptoms. And when I say symptoms, I mean like the hypomania that might come up from, because I have bipolar type 1, so I lean towards the manic side of bipolar. And so, you know, things like coast to coast travel can be a little tricky for me. But if I am just very aware of making sure to get good sleep that first night of the trip, you know, and all nights of the trip, but just knowing that sleep is my huge trigger, and making sure to take my medication every night. So once you have that, and hypomania, I don't know if the viewers know too much about hypomania, but you know, I like to think of bipolar on a 1 to 10 scale, with 5 being the middle place where you want to always try and stay as close to 5 as you can. Because if you're at a 1, you're severely depressed, and if you're at a 10, you're severely manic and have to be in the hospital either end. So to do that, I mean, if I feel myself creeping up towards hypomania would be like a 7, 8, you know, then I make sure to get to bed early a couple nights in a row and get really good quality sleep, and you know, do relaxing things like an easy yoga class that really can be calming and soothing, and try to reduce my workload a little bit too, which is helpful to have folks to kind of hand things off to. So I have a great team around me with This Is My Brave, that everyone chips in to help when folks need help. So I think just having lived with this for now 10 years, coming up on 11, you just figure out what works. And, you know, I think I said it to you before that my lifestyle 10 years ago was so different than today. I mean, I eat whole food, pretty much a whole foods diet, and I drink a lot of water, and I exercise nearly every single day, you know, even if it's only 30 minutes. And that has made such a difference with my mental health compared to 10 years ago, when I would just work 60 hours a week, and, you know, I wasn't taking care of myself.
It's great you recognize the need for self-care, especially at times when you're starting to feel a little bit more off center,
Mm-hmm.
and can take the time to take care of your needs at those times. So Glad to hear that for sure. What would you like to say to someone newly experiencing mental illness?
Well, sometimes I get emails from folks who are newly diagnosed, and I I try to always tell them that at first it might feel like just like a really tough card you were dealt, a really hard thing to go through. And it's, unimaginable almost that why me? Why is this happening to me? Um, and I try to let them know that, it takes time to understand your condition. So I encourage people to seek out resources, whether that be support groups or online communities or um, a lot of support groups you can meet up in person, which is great because you can really get to know folks who may be further along in their recovery journey and they can give you suggestions. But I also say that, finding a good doctor is hard, but it can be done. And so if you don't click with the first one, keep looking and ask for recommendations from folks. And once you find the right doctor, then continuing to work on identifying which medication works well for you and which type of treatment, and that it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, and um, there are bumps in the road, and you just got to stay positive and build that support network around you. I feel so lucky. My husband is so incredibly supportive, and my family and my in-laws who live close, and my close friends. So once you have that structure in place, then getting through it it's I would maybe even kind of think of it as getting through like breast cancer or another kind of cancer. I mean, you can get through it. There are people who do it, and lots of us that live successfully, despite a diagnosis. And so not to lose hope, I guess, is the main message.
Sounds great, and you're a good example of that. So, if people like to learn more about This Is My Brave, how can they do that?
We have a website. It's just thisismybrave.org, and we're pretty active on all the social media channels like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And we have 4 shows on the schedule so far for the fall. There's a chance we could add a 5th, but so far we have 4, and we'll be in Washington, D.C., and Baltimore, Maryland, Oklahoma City, and Denver, Colorado this fall. And then we'll have a whole new set of shows on the schedule for next year. And if folks are interested in auditioning, they can look up where the auditions are and sign up. And we also always are looking for guest writers on our blog to share stories or poetry, or even music can be submitted to us through like a YouTube link if they had an original piece of music they wanted to get out there with their story. We publish guest posts pretty much every week or so, and love to get new voices and new stories out there. And that's our goal as a platform, is to share stories to end the stigma.
Sounds great. Sounds great. If viewers have any questions for you on Brainwaves on IMRO's website after this broadcast, are you ready and willing to answer some questions there?
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you very much for being on this broadcast, and best of luck to you.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for having me.
You're welcome. Take care.